What's going on, Hoop fam? I thank you all for joining. Had a little technical difficulties, but we are here. That's all on my end. Something happened with StreamYard and got it figured out. I'm with one of my sisters in Hoop. She is one of my favorite people. Always keeps it real. You know, Hoop fam, I always talk about real talk only, hashtag RTO. Well, this is one of the queens of it. So I have Lizzie Lapp from the Hoops Talk. This is one of my sisters. Yeah, she put the battery in my back to not only talk about these sports and all the things that are going on in society, but I also have AirPods because of her as well. So no doubt, that's what we do. So we're going to talk about a lot of basketball things here, lots to unpack. We've had some controversial things going in the W. The Lakers are rolling, so we have a lot to unpack. How are you, Liz?
Hey, you know what? I'm doing as best as anyone can. I know you and I kind of are talking about that. We're healthy and happy, the whole fam, and we are excited. The Hoops Talk. We're gonna have season 3 next Wednesday. So that's awesome. We're super excited to have season 3 coming. We already have October lined up with a lot of guests. And yeah, we're super excited. And I mean, so much going on in the world. That might be in the podcast. But I will say, like, what better day in basketball can we have today when you have game 2 of the finals, the Lakers and the Heat, and game 1 of the WNBA finals with the Aces and the Storm. So I don't know. I'm gonna have double screens going on.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. No question. So my wife laughs at me, but I watch like 3 screens at once. So yeah, no doubt. The only thing that would be better if our Sparks were in the finals, right? Like, yeah, that would be really good. So yeah, the Sparks, the Lakers, the Dodgers, it'd be crazy right now.
It'd be crazy. It would be crazy. You know, we had a really good chance at one point. I mean, talking about the Sparks, they were in 3rd place. They were looking good. It looked like they had the chemistry going. Candace had herself a season of seasons.
We will be talking about that for sure.
We will be talking about that. Yeah. So yeah, I'm sad that they're not there, but we have excellent basketball still. I mean, the number 1 and the number 2 are playing each other starting tonight, and it's going to be fire. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, so am I. This is going to be an amazing series. So I'll ask you, because again, you're one of my sisters and Hoop, one of the queens of real talk only. I'll ask you, what do you want to start, NBA or W?
Well, since the NBA is starting 1 hour before the W, I think we should start with the NBA because it's on 1 hour before. Being fair.
Do it. Let's do it. So when you had me on, when you all had me on the Hoops Talk, and we talked about the return of sports and the plans weren't firmed up for the NBA and the W as well, we both sort of waxed poetically. We all waxed poetically, Karen included, about our feelings about sports coming back, right? And we let those feelings be known. But they're back. We watched an NBA season. We're now in the finals. So give me your thoughts on how the Lakers are playing and what did you think was going to happen before injuries with the Heat, and how do you see this playing out with the injuries with the Heat as well?
Well, as far as the NBA season, I mean, WNBA kicked off like all basketball, and then NBA, soon to follow. And the protocols that they have established have just been insane. I think it's one of those crazy things that we all were watching. Our eyes were all on it, and it worked. Unlike other sports, you got MLB, you have now NFL, the Titans, and I forget they're going to have a bye week. There's just a lot that couldn't happen. And I believe MLB is going to have a bubble. College football, MLB is going to try to have a bubble here in San Diego. So there was just a lot. But I commend the WNBA and the NBA for the protocols that they put in place for, how they were able to keep everybody safe, including staff, including reporters. I mean, we're seeing how like one person the top getting sick can really make everybody else sick. So I'm glad the NBA, kept themselves really nice and healthy. I want to say that from the biggest surprise, of course, is what happened with the Clippers. And I know we want to talk about Lakers more, but I want to commend everybody that played in the season, and in particular because the Clippers is another Los Angeles team.
No, let's talk about it.
I don't really, but I have always said that the Clippers, I used to always say they'll never get out of the first round. And even when they had CP3 and they had Blake Griffith, and they still had a really strong bench. There's something about them at the end of the line that they just can't close it out. We've seen that.
Yeah.
And I think Paul George, he just hasn't been able to do it. And I think it was a lot on Kawhi to say, like, well, you already won a championship. It's such a different mentality, right?
Yeah.
So hats off to them. They thought, and it did it. And now you see Doc going to the 76ers because hopefully he's going to be sending some of that magic that he has as being someone that can bring people together.
Yes.
Was what they need. I mean, if you think about people that have, or teams that have not made it, we're talking the Sixers, we're talking the Celtics, we're talking the Bucks. These were like heavy hitters going in, heavy hitters going in. And you saw teams like the Sun, and now the Heat that didn't have all this cachet going into the bubble that are surprising us left and right. I mean, we could have had a Nuggets Heat final, if it wasn't, the Lakers were the only one that were like, yeah, they'll probably go all the way. They're actually still on that path. So that brings me to the Lakers. I gotta tell you, they make me happy. They are fine. I don't know if it's Frank Vogel. I don't know if it's LeBron. And of course, everybody's got something. There's a bunch of haters, whatever. But he has really, in my opinion, like, he's been able to spread that determination to everybody on the team and make everybody understand what it is to be a role player. I mean, you saw that in Houston when they had to go smaller and they took Dwight out and JaVale McGee, and they went a little bit smaller. They were really able to bring Harden down, with points. You're seeing how they were able to handle him. Because those guys, of course, comeback kids is Reggie Miller. I mean, if I had a shot every time Reggie Miller said that, I'm still drunk right now. I was like, oh God. So, they would lose one. It seemed like the pattern would lose game one, understand what they were up against. Frank Vogel pivots his starters. I liked seeing that. He's still, even if you think about the game one, he didn't go into panic mode, which I loved, when they were down by like, a good 20 piece. And he didn't go into panic mode, and he gave LeBron the rest when he normally takes the rest. And that kind of has like a Popovich mentality too, because I remember Shaq always saying, like, if the general is calm, then that goes to the team, right? It kind of brings out this calm, which is a little bit different than Phil Jackson, who's just like, I'll let you play till you're down by 50, and you got to breathe through your eyelids and you get zen. So I want to respect Miami because it's not just luck that they're there. I mean, Jimmy Butler is really transforming that team as well. Spoelstra's been in the finals, win championships. He's very tenured. There's a lot of respect to them. What you're seeing Bam Adebayo, what you're seeing Tyler Hero, which Tyler Hero was a rookie that I picked at the beginning to be a gem, a silent player that no one was really paying attention to.
You hear it, Hoop Fam.
Him and John Morant.
Yeah.
I was the one. We'll roll the tape. I'll get the podcast. I'll bring the podcast back for episode 57 or whatever it was. But yeah, so you're seeing them have confidence. You're seeing them play that way. And to see game 5, really, I mean, sorry, to see game one, really, 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 I think it had to do with Anthony Davis. I just don't think they had an answer for Anthony Davis. And when he, like, you know, if he can get 30 plus points, that's already like you're getting a win, you know, and then you
Right.
top LeBron, and then the bench. I mean, even Cantavius Pope, like he
Right.
was okay. Danny Green, but you know, KCP, he was holding it down.
Yes.
Kuzma's actually decided to help make plays instead of always trying to make the point.
Right.
You know, so
Right.
that's good to see in the growth there. And above that, I think one of the things that really caused problems in the bubble for a lot of teams was the mental stability, which you know, there's a lot of mental health that I know you and we all talked about that in our podcast when you were on, about the mental health of being in a place 24/7 and just like your job and your life and everything being in this like bubble, and that is going to wear on you. I'm sorry, you know, these people are not superhuman. It's going to, I mean, we're going crazy in our house. We had to go get an Airbnb in the desert on vacation.
Right. Exactly.
Just so you walk out without a mask.
Yes.
Yeah, you do. Yes. The day to day, when your home becomes your work and your school, you know, like for you, you have your daughter, it becomes the schoolhouse, it becomes the workstation, it becomes the break room, it becomes, you know, where you sleep, everything. It's just a lot. And
it's
for
a whole lot.
You know, still being able to leave, it's a whole lot. Yeah, it's a whole lot. So the mental fortitude, I think, is what is going to elevate. I think these teams are in there. They've just had this like different mindset, and LeBron is like dialed in. I mean, you know the look.
Yes.
We all know the look.
Right.
It's determination. Yeah. And unfortunately, they're going into this game without what is it? I always call him Dragon Gorgic because I don't know.
Yeah. Goran Dragic, yes.
Yes.
Hey, you know what? His people need to get in touch with you. His people need to get in touch with you, Liz, and they need to patent and copyright that for sure.
I'm saying it's a pretty good nickname. So he'll be out, and then it looks like Bam's going to be out this game. Hopefully, we'll be back in game 3. So it's gonna be really. Spoelstra was already gonna have to figure out how to pivot once he was coming up against the transition D that the Lakers had, the way that they didn't have an answer for Anthony Davis. He was gonna have to pivot already, like by the second half. But now with those two people out, I don't like, you know, I heard one of the analysts say, you know, the Miami bench is really fortified, and I don't feel that way. But, you know, because I think about what the Lakers bench has contributed, and I just don't see that being the same with the Heat. Whereas with the Clippers, I could say like, oh yeah, like the Clippers bench could have started and been probably. I mean, you saw with Paul George, like they did better without him playing. Unfortunately, I don't want to dog too much on PG, but I'm just like, that was a hustle. That to me, I just saw something going around on Twitter with Josiah Johnson, right? The king, the Twitter king. And he was saying, I wonder if they played it so that Kawhi would want to get Paul George. You know, maybe it's a long game. That he went to the Clippers, not the Lakers.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, you know,
up.
He absolutely. Well, somebody in I appreciate you joining. So one of our guests here actually said you should dog PG some more. So yeah. You know, it's funny because, you know, because to your point, the mental part of it, and when you go to a team, and one of the things that I said, and I want you to touch on this with respect to Paul George, especially. one of the things that I'll say a lot, Liz, is when people are fans of young teams that are developing, they want to be in the lottery all the time, and they'll say, hey, we have a young team. Why do we want to go and be an 8 seed in the playoffs and play, say, the Lakers as a 1 seed and get beaten 4? Well, one of the reasons why you want to do it is because you want your young players to get as much experience early as possible. So when they enter their prime, they're ready to sort of handle the expectations of playing on a team that has championship aspirations. And when you look at Paul George, you look at Lou Williams, you look at Montrezl Harrell, 3 players in particular that the Clippers were certainly going to depend on if they were going to win a championship. And these are 3 players that have a lot of experience in the NBA. But even Paul George, when he was on those deep runs in Indiana, nobody expected them to beat LeBron. So talk a little bit about Paul George, the mental aspect of it, and dealing with expectations, and talking about, again, what you were saying about the Clippers. It's one thing to be good. It's another thing to play with expectations. So talk to me a little, because when you touched on that, I wanted to ask you about that even more.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because, like, as you know, with our way we talk about sports does have a lot less to do with the X's and the O's, and we do kind of delve into, like, what is the world happening around these players.
Facts.
And I think that with Paul George he is like what Kevin Durant tried to do. He's trying to find a team to win in. Okay, that's not slander. That's not bad. Everybody wants to win, right? The difference is he doesn't have the skill. He doesn't have the skill. So I think someone told me, like, the difference, and it might have been you. The difference with LeBron is that you can train as much as you can, but then you just have that X factor innate talent that can't be trained, and that, I think, goes to a lack of the mental game and potentially the pressure that was put on these Clippers and Paul George and all the hoopla. There was I'm here in LA.
I picked them.
Like, it was insane. It was insane. So I just think, like, when you have that, like, to your point, teams that are like, we're young teams, we've never been to a playoff, and they're also being put in this bubble experience. You saw teams like the Sun doing what they did, right? Bubble boys. It's because they were, like, free. You saw that free play, and you saw this, like, even with the Nuggets, although the Nuggets, they've been around the Joker and Murray, they've been holding it down, but it's just like this kind of like this freedom of expectation. And I think the Clippers came in with, like, such a high expectation. I think Paul George is just one of those teams. You saw, like, OKC, when he was on there, you just don't see, like, it's like right there, and then it's what's going to take you to the next level. And I think the mental part of it is really where you're going to get that next level, because if you think about a lot of the greats in this, it is that extra gear that they have, because they have to push their will of their own body and skill, and then they have to push the will of their team. So even when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, like, if you look at the Clippers, who, like, for instance, I think AD is making he's making a run for MVP, finals MVP. That man is, like, they said he was, he's not very, like, tough. He doesn't really talk a lot. I saw him pumping his chest. I saw him get face to face with Crowder, but that one fell on LeBron when he slapped the basketball. I mean, he is, like,
he was the one standing there.
Out.
Facts. True. Very true.
Right? And LeBron had to be like, only. okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Real talk only.
That is a development, right, of, like, the mental, the physical. But I thought about it a little bit. I'm like, okay, so if, let's say, AD's making this run for finals MVP, that's cool, because LeBron wants to put him in a position where he's not going to be like, he's gonna be like, he's a guy, that's why you're here, don't leave next season,
Right.
But I thought, like, but what that happens, like, when you become the guy, you then mentally have to be ready to be that guy. And is AD mentally ready to be that guy? I don't know yet. He's getting the confidence, but it's like being a manager, right? Like there's a lot of people that become directors and managers and all this. So I worked in tech, so I know, and I'm like, but you don't know how to manage people. You decide because
That's exactly
you
right.
made something real good.
That's real. That's real. That's
But
real.
like managing people, you know, it's like
Yes.
it's a different skill set. I mean, there was a point where I think LeBron yelled, they were ahead, and he yelled at KCP to catch the ball with both hands. I mean, for real? You're gonna let a teammate talk to you like that? It's LeBron, you know. So
Right.
I think with Paul George, you know, and you saw with Joel Embiid, like it's a lot of bluster for Joel Embiid, and I think that's what he's trying to like. How he's trying to carry himself mentally to be like, I can do this. I'm tough enough. And then you just see like this break apart and injuries also. And
Yes.
I don't know, sometimes it's shooting yourself in the foot before you even really have that. But I think another thing too is because we had Kristen Peak on our season finale. She is an NBA draft analysis for Yahoo Sports, and she mentioned, you
I
know,
saw it.
when you look at Tyler, when you look at Tyler Hero and you look at Bam Adebayo, you're seeing two guys that were like out of this world in high school. They go with Kentucky, was it? They're in a system that is all about like basics and all about like grounding and all about actually getting ready for what the NBA is going to be like. Because you might just be sitting on that bench for a long, long time. But when you're up and you're ready, then you're ready. And now you're seeing that blossom with the Miami Heat, is that you got two rookies. You didn't have to try to go get like first draft picks. These guys were like there, and you're able to really grow them in that system. And I think maybe that's a shift, you know,
but no, but you're spot on with that, because I can say from my days and the vast majority of those guys that were at with the Phoenix Suns that were 8-0 in the bubble, a vast majority of those guys, I was part of the crew that drafted them. And, you know, Devin Booker in particular, to your point, Devin Booker in particular, also at Kentucky, he was actually the sixth man at Kentucky. He didn't start. And so to your point, what you're looking at when you're evaluating them, and I'll say this, and what you're talking about with expectations and Paul George, and when you play on a team that has expectations, when you're evaluating that team, you have to look at them and I guess be able to ascertain how competitive they are, how much do they really love the game. Because when you're at a place like Kentucky, and the Clippers are like this as well, when you play on a team that has so much talent, Liz, it's almost like you can either stand out with your competitive nature, or you can also hide because you're on a team with a bunch of really good players. So you don't necessarily have to compete, right? And so one of the things when I would look at Kentucky players, and, you know, Bam, Tyler Hero, and again, Devin Booker for us when I was with Phoenix, was how competitive are they really? Because it is very easy to be on this team with 6 All-Americans and not be competitive, right? And you can coast, and you guys can still win. So, you know, it's so what you said is just spot on. It's spot on. And so it's always great talking about, getting your insight, listening to you talk about because again, as you said, we're talking about more than the X's and the O's, right? We're talking about the mentality that it takes to do something. And even in the W, it's crazier because there's only 144 jobs, which is crazy, right?
Man.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, you had some teams playing games that were like, okay, we got a starting 5 and 2 subs. Let's do this, you know, in the wobble, as they like to call it, you know, and you had to show out. You had to show out for those spots.
No question. No question. So I'll ask you this. I'll ask you this about the NBA, and then we got to get into the wobble. I cannot wait to talk about the wobble. So how many games, how do you see the final series going now? Even with Bam, if he comes back in game 3, how many games do you see it going? How competitive do you think it will be?
Um, just from the body language of game one, I really thought that the Heat were going to have more fire. I felt like they doubted themselves. I think they'll doubt themselves without a couple of key players. I think it'll be a closer score, but Lakers will take this. I'm going to say overall Lakers in 5 because I do think Miami will maybe game 3 when Bam's back. I see that happening, but there's, I don't know, like you just see the energy. These guys are just like, there's a certain energy level that you have when you see the energy level, like one team being just like you could tell even the sports announcers are getting bored. Like Van Gundy and them were like talking about something else. Like, and they're like, oh yeah, LeBron man about, you know what I mean? It's just like you can tell like kind of the energy, and I'm hoping they'll have higher energy, but I do think the Lakers will take this game from maybe like by, I don't know, it might be super close. It might be like 5 points, 5-10. And then overall, I think the Lakers will take the series in 5. And with a mask on and gloves and a space helmet, I'm going to be down at the Staples.
You're going to be there. Yes.
If I can. Social distance with a mask, totally safe, taking my COVID test and everything. But I would like to since I'll be here in LA, experience that again.
Yes. Sure. It's funny because I certainly miss just the energy of being in the city when I just remember being in the city when in the Kobe and Shaq years, and the energy was just amazing, and expecting the championship when it finally happened, it's just so crazy. It's so crazy, right? And this is, and we live in Dallas now, and it's college football and NFL here, right? And so with it being so big here, I remember saying to some of my friends that are college football fans, and they would ask me, because I love USC football, and they would ask me, so how was it when USC, when Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart, those days, how was that in comparison to the Lakers? And I'm like, there's no comparison. It's no comparison when the Lakers are like, when and I tell them, like, when the Lakers are and Sparks are on fire, because again, and I say that about the Sparks as well, because when the Lakers were winning titles and in contention for titles, it was like my first year working in the NBA, the WNBA and the NBA. And I remember going to Detroit, Liz, and people talk about the Sparks and the Lynx. They talk about that rivalry. But Sparks and Shock, that rivalry was just off the charts. And I remember going to the games in Detroit and watching the two teams hating each other, and then Michael Cooper and Bill Laimbeer hated each other as well as coaches. It was amazing. It was amazing. So I say that because we got to get to the wubble. So before we get to, and Hoop Fan, we're going to talk about a lot here. I appreciate you all joining. I'm with one of my sisters in Hoop, Liz Lapp. She does amazing work with the Hoops Talk podcast. She had me on there. She was part of the reason why I'm in this game again. And so I appreciate her for doing this. And this is a conversation that we got to continue to have. I need to have the rest of the crew as well. So I'm certainly looking forward to doing that at some point. Yeah. So as we talk about the W, I did a segment where I talked about some of the value players that were kind of surprises for me. Betnijah Laney, Maisha Hines-Allen, of course, Crystal Dangerfield, Julie Alamon, who were, of course, Taya Cooper as well, right? Talk to me about Taya Cooper's impact with the Sparks and the season that she had, and the fact that, again, she was cut by the team that drafted her before she even worked out.
Yeah, Taya Cooper to me was so much needed energy and so vital. Her and Brittany, they were just like part of
Brittany
a spark.
Facts.
Yeah, it was a situation where coming off of what we saw last season and how, like, I still have beef with Derek Fisher over the 11 minutes that Candace played in that game. Like, he and I will not be good for a moment still. But you know,
Ask you about
seeing
that,
that
so
and
keep
not
going.
really
Ask
so,
you about
you know,
that.
coming off of that season, after that, coming off of that season, and then wondering how the wobble was going to affect them and if they were going to be able to gel, I think this was actually the best thing for them. I think the lack of travel, especially for Candace, was really important. I think them being able
Good
to
point.
be in one place, it felt very much like a March Candace situation, you know, very much like everybody just being together in one spot. The trust, I think trust was a big issue, I think, in last season, because, you know, Candace didn't play in the beginning of the season. She was injured, and then she came in and like trying to say like, hey guys, you guys been doing a great job, but the real game starts Candace here. You know, like there was all these like mind games and stuff, and I don't think Derek really like knew how to layer that in. And I think in this season, it was just a gel. And Taya Cooper, outstanding. Like she
Yeah.
was, you know what I love about her? She would drive. Seeing
Yeah.
her drive was
Yeah.
so interesting because that's just confidence. And she's, I
Facts.
mean, these are like respected players, but to see her driving, I was like really, really happy to see that because, you know, three ball is big in the WNBA. Like if you get that down, the arsenal of what you can do is huge. But the drive, I think, is something that they, you know, putting more in play. I think Taya did that really well. Brittany and her defense and her tireless
Ooh.
effort to
Yes.
never give up on a play.
Speak.
I mean, that right there, I was in love with her. I was in love watching her. I was just like, oh my God, like she wouldn't give up. She was
Yeah.
scrapping. She was there. I mean, she would not give up on a play, and you love to see that because, you know, not to make the comparison, but that's kind of like the Miami Heat kind of do that buzzer. They go like right to the second. They won't give
Yes.
up even
Yes.
when they have to reset. And Brittany has that like flow of like, hey, you know what? I'm not gonna reset. You know, I know we have to reset the play, but we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep at it. I love seeing the youngins, you know, for the team, the newbies on the
Right.
team,
Right.
really doing a stand out. And you know, again, it could be like no one was really talking about these two players, like as far as like new players coming in or rookies coming in, like you saw with Satow or Sabrina Nitty Carter. So you get a little loose, you know, you can play around. And if Derek Fisher is a coach that can allow for that and understand what that means, I think he lets them play enough to like learn from, you know, maybe a bad pass or when Chelsea Gray is trying to do like, you know, these crazy no look passes, which are normally pretty effective. But you know, every once in a while
Yeah.
you're like, okay, maybe you shouldn't have done that one.
Yeah.
But I think that that gives them a lot of, you know, ability. So I think they were they were two that, like, to me on the Sparks. It was great to see A.Williams back too, like in the
Yes.
fourth season
Yeah.
that she did get, you know, she had her injuries, but it was great. Like she she's tough. Like
Very.
I see
Very.
her doing some very elbowy moves
Yeah.
going on there. I'm
Physical.
okay. You know,
Yeah.
like that's good. That is, you know,
Yeah.
it's very physical to see that the physical. So I think the Sparks had the physicality, and the defensive plays. I mean, Candace, Defense Player of the Year. I mean, I know you want to talk about that, which we should.
Yes.
But it was definitely one of those things. Definitely a surprise. Kennedy Carter, I think a lot of people were not talking about her, and you know what happened there. She was just shining, 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 and it was awful that she got the injury. And I think Jewel Lloyd, you know, was another player. You know, it's just like, you know, when you
Wow.
see these players that like give me the ball, like that can go to their teammate, like a Diana Taurasi, right, and say like, I'm ready. It's me. It's me. That's what
What
you
I
want to
do.
see. I think
Yeah.
that's amazing. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the leaders of any you know, of any team need to be able to say, okay, we're going to do that. And you see that, you know, you see players that are like, I'm ready. Let's do this. And usually it's going to work out. I think it worked out.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
surprised with who are in the finals, not at all.
Well, talk to me about that then. What's your prediction? Talk to me actually about Seattle's been pretty fortunate because for the most part, I know that a player just left because of the birth of her baby. But
Yeah.
for the most part, they've been pretty healthy and they seem to be much like in the NBA with the Lakers being pretty together in these sort of crazy
Right.
circumstances and unique circumstances. Seattle has been pretty together. But before we get to them, talk to me about Vegas and especially with the year that they have with of course no Liz Cambage, Kelsey Plum tears her ACL, which I'm sorry, her Achilles, which I've done before, and I felt so bad for her because she was playing so well in the playoffs last year, right? So talk to me about them, and then of course De'Erica Hamby gets hurt, and they're still here, they're still standing. So talk to me about Seattle and what you see. I'm sorry, Vegas.
Well, Vegas. So Vegas coming in I had huge question marks because, like to your point, they didn't have Liz, which was was huge. That to me, I was like, wow, what are they gonna do? Like, how are they gonna be able? Like, she was so instrumental, in getting them to the playoffs when they her and Asia and that team just gelling like that. And then it's like Asia and Angel and Derek, like you really saw them like they just had this like extra push, this extra drive. That even then, like I was like, I don't know, like can they sustain this? Is this sustainable? So I was just wondering like what is the sustainability? And then you see Asia really sometimes she has to take over a game where she's just like, okay, I'm putting it on me and I'm gonna do it.
That was amazing. Yeah.
That is amazing, but at the same time it's like how do you sustain that, and how does like sometimes I wonder what Lambier is thinking when he he lets them go a little longer where she's like playing every minute and I'm like, okay, what are you gonna do? Like he just I don't know, I don't see him like energizing them sometimes when they need that, where you see the losses. They played Seattle twice. And I believe both games Sue Bird was not in those games. I think she sat out. So I think the X factor will be I think Angel is like amazing too. But I think the X factor she's just like she is like she's soaring. Like it's amazing to see her and just like what she's been able to do. So, we knew she had it, but it's just so it's like the focus not being so much Liz Cambage, which is nothing wrong with that because she's a great player. But then, like how they've been able to, add those layers to the other players is so impactful. Great. To see. I think that I honestly think that it's it's Seattle's series to lose. But I think it's so close. I think this is like probably one of the closest matches we've had in a really long time.
Yeah.
No disrespect to any other seasons, but I really feel that it's such a close match. But I'm going to give it. I want to give it to Vegas just because I feel like the will, like just seeing Asia just do what she's doing.
She's had an amazing season.
I think her ending the season with a championship because they were that close last season. Remember, they were like that close. It was like they were crazy shots. So I can definitely see this being their year. Although I have question marks because De'Erica Hamby is not there.
That's a big one. That's a big one.
That's a huge one.
Yeah.
That's a huge one. And I just, you've seen Seattle, Sue Bird's back, everybody, Brianna Stewart, everyone's like looking like, okay, we're ready. I don't know. I just have, I don't even know who the underdog is in this. I don't know if anyone, it's like goes back and forth in my mind, but like for me, I just feel like Vegas will have the hat trick.
Yeah.
For this
I
might be wrong.
No, that's the thing about it. It's if we looked at it. So to your point, I'm sure when if we ask any of the prognosticators, I don't think any of us picked Connecticut to be in the semis, right? So anything,
Yeah,
one thing about the bubble, anything can happen. So yeah, I mean, I hear exactly what you're saying. So what about how, one of the things I want to ask you about, and we're talking about teams and being able to mesh and all of those things. How has Seattle been able to, so their coaches, their head coach isn't in the bubble, right? So how have they been able to, because when you look at them as a team, they're basically too deep at every position, right? So their bench players could probably start for most of the teams in the NBA, in the WNBA. So I think Jordan Canada's ready to run her own team. I'm just using her as an example.
right.
How do you think they have been able to kind of keep all of that together, make sure that, hey, even with those young players, because Jordan Canada is pretty young in her career, so she's looking to establish herself. And that's hard for a young player to say, you know what, I got to play a role, but I need to establish myself as well because I haven't received that, DeWanna Bonner is the highest paid player in the W, making almost 128 grand. She hasn't received that yet. So talk to me about Seattle and how they've been able to really kind of make sure that they mesh as a team, despite the fact that they're so deep.
That's a great question because I think that it really has to do with the veteran staff. It has to do with if your team with the veterans that are there and have been there, because like Sue's been there, Brianna, like been there in the moment as well as been there as like the veterans on the team. It's about how open they are for the other team, the new teams or the rookies to come and ask them all the questions and get everything they need. We had a young player on one of our podcasts, and she, gosh, I can't remember her name, but I wish I could remember her name. Sorry, my thinking. But she played in the NCAA, and it was her last year, right? And she had all new teammates. Wow. And she told us, you know what? I realized that I had to be the one to tell them, you can't show up late to practice. You can't hang out till this time. You can't. This is what you got to eat. She was like, I was responsible to give them that information, not just the what we're learning on the plays, the practices, and what have you, but I was responsible. And it was like only partnership with her and her coach to be like, okay, I am now that extension of the coach's principles and what we want to do and how we want to form this team. And I think you have these veterans on those teams that are saying, hey, you know what, I'm here. We're all in this, compound together.
Right.
Take that time, leverage that time. Because I know like Angel McCautry, she said that. She's like, I got to tell the young players, you are super lucky because you have so many veteran seasoned championship elite athletes at your fingertips.
Yes.
Ask us questions, keep asking questions. So I think it's about how, what was that communication level? And to your point, they're so deep and they have that ability, they have the patience, and they'll also be able to make space for that happening. And I mean, at the end of the day, like when you got stars on your team, it's like, I mean, you see that happening with other teams where you're like the two stars, whatever the five, the starting five being so great, that you're able to put yourself in position of like, okay, I'm locked in. What else does everybody have to do? How do we do it? And I mean, I assume they're really good friends too.
It seems like it.
It seems like they're just like really like they like hanging out with each other. I mean, you saw that with Candace, who was doing a IG live, and Chelsea's was waiting for dinner. She was like, hey, when are you gonna be off so we can have dinner? It's like I think those types of relationships have made it easier for a team like that to gel more faster than it would if they were, didn't have that ability. Because it could be a totally different scenario if you think about it if they weren't in the bubble. Did he say that the Storm would be where they're at?
Right.
I don't know. I mean,
maybe
the Aces would be in first place. Maybe I don't know. No, it's a
No,
lot
it's
of
true.
ifs, ands, ors, but it's really about that extra mental, you know, the brain is the biggest muscle, right? And about how they're going to use it to get their egos, out of the way. I think you see that a lot with the teams that are being successful in these situations.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of mental fortitude, can you please tell me your thoughts? Because every time I watch her, it's almost like, and it's so unorthodox to watch her, but I get goosebumps because she is such a warrior. She is a G. Tell me what you think about Alyssa Thomas. She is a G.
I I don't know if I know like a bigger idol in the sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like it's like I said, it's another level where I- some of her that I'm watching, I could not even believe what I was watching. I was just like, oh, oh, you're just like this grind, this will, this push, and it's just like, you know what? Please tell me I can't.
Right, right.
Please tell
Yeah,
me I
yeah,
can't.
yeah. Never mind that I have two torn labrums and I dislocated my shoulder. I'm still like it is
Yeah, no, she's like,
crazy watching. Yeah, it's so
yeah,
crazy watching
yeah.
it.
I mean, but that's also, I mean, you have to think about like, that's also a person that's so aware of like their own body. They're so
Yeah,
in
yeah,
tune with their own body. That's a person that is like not only just mentally just like in another level, but they're listening to their body and they're like, I can take it, I can go the next level. I can, it's like just like a different like being, like some source where you're just like, okay, the play, the will, the mental, the physical, and all understanding what all that means. And then like haters just put right into their veins, put the haters right, because
right.
that's what the extra fuel. You see that with the greats, you see that happening where you're just like, and then that is infectious, right? That moves the team, that gets the team
Yes,
believing, that gives the team the oxygen that they need. And uh it's just, it's like it, it was incredible to see. It makes me sad, that it ended the way that it did, but fuck, if you're gonna go like that. That's how I
yeah,
want to roll.
yeah,
That's how I
yeah,
want to
yeah, yeah. Exactly. She went out like and it's funny too because I look at that and I can say this when my daughter was born, I gained a new appreciation for pain, right? Because I used to think,
go.
oh yeah, I'm playing with this injury, I'm tough, and all those things. And we've seen players that have torn labrums, they're out for the year. In fact, they're out for a significant portion of the next season. And for her to, okay, I have two torn labrums, my shoulder's separated, and to come back the next game and the play and the numbers that she was putting up, again, the respect that I have for her, the respect that I have for women is like it's just crazy to see it. It's so amazing to see it. So now
It's so crazy.
I, it is. I got to ask you this before we get to the thing that we really have to unpack with the great Candace Parker. Um, were there any players or teams that when we started with the bubble that maybe you didn't root for as much, or maybe you didn't care for them at all, and they sort of turned your spirit on them? Were there any teams like that, or any players?
I would say like a team. I'm trying to think. I've never been a Mystics fan, but what they ended up doing with the roster that they had,
Yeah, yeah,
I was pretty impressed
yeah.
with what they worked with. I'm not a fan, and I'm not like, I mean, like teams where you're like, okay, yeah, they're there, cool. Like
Yeah, yeah,
that. It's, of course, they're champions. That's
of
not taking
course.
away anything of their greatness, and
Right.
But it was one of those things where I was like, fuck, like what are they gonna do? You get to the top, and then they're like almost not making it, and
Yeah.
they're in contention now. So I would say
Yeah.
that they were one of the teams that I was just like, okay, all right, you're still gonna try. That's good,
Yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
like, the Liberty was another team that I had super high hopes for, and I think that they went out balling. I think they tried the best, and they never gave up.
Yeah. They played hard, no question.
Yeah. My husband and my closest friends, they are Liberty fans. So, props to
Yeah.
Liberty, So that's why, I'm kind of like, a little bit of my heart for them. I love a
Of
lot of the
course.
players too. I love the
Yeah.
organization. I had the CEO, Kia Clark, on the podcast last season.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but I would say like the Mystics were, because everybody else kind of like panned out. I mean, no left love the Lynx as the
Right.
fan.
Yeah. Understood.
I get it,
Understood.
Simone Augustus.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
Moni. I was another one. We didn't even talk about Moni, which is like, holy Moni, what? Having her veteran presence, having that grit,
Yeah.
it's the story of her no longer being with the Lynx was sad, right? Because you're like,
Yeah.
oh, you guys really couldn't have like figured out a way to make that happen. And yet at the same time, like she comes to the Sparks and she was like, oh, hello, I have my own, segment with the Sparks, and this is gonna happen. And every time she came out, she was just like a spark. Like she was like,
no question.
Nope, we're gonna get this done. We're gonna do this. And so that was a player that I was like, really? Okay. But no, fantastic.
Yeah.
So those are probably my Santa player, one of the players that I wasn't, didn't know what from. And then the Mystics being one of those teams where I was like, wow, you really tried. And I like to see that even though they were down, like there's superstars in their team.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they really they really tried, and it's to your point when you see this. And first off, I'm glad that everybody has been healthy from a COVID standpoint. But the players taking advantage of the opportunities when maybe players went down or some players opted out, like that was very compelling for me to see. And so, to your point, Washington was one of those teams that had players come through and say, you know what, I got to take advantage of this opportunity. And so to your point, next year, when hopefully if everything is quote unquote back to normal from a basketball standpoint, not a societal standpoint, because I believe that we don't need to go back to what normal was, right?
We do not need to.
we don't need to go back there. But from a basketball standpoint, when you start looking at these teams coming back at full strength, like it's going to be crazy when you start looking at some of these combinations. So to your point with Washington, when Elena Deladon comes back, and then you add Tina Charles to that, they're going to be amazing. It's going to be so crazy next year in the W. And free agency, which leads me to, there's one of the biggest free agents in WNBA history plays on the team that we root for, right? Candace Parker.
Yeah.
So before we get to the snub, it will always be known as the snub. What do you think happens with Candace Parker next year? Do we see her back in purple and gold? What's your gut feeling? If I had to ask you today.
Okay. And you're going to have this tape so you can show it to me, right? When it
No.
I think she's going to stay with Sparks. I think that she's determined to win a championship with the Sparks. I think that she's going to take, she's going to take calls, which she should. But I think that she'll stay a Spark. I really do. I think that after, what they've been able to accomplish in the bubble, as disappointing as that final game, that playoff game was, which they need to change these one-offs to like at least a series of
facts.
For real, we need more WNBA. So come on, let's do this. I think that she'll stay
up 68%.
Really do. Yeah.
So,
I know that just came out.
Yeah. No.
I think she'll stay a Spark.
I hope she does. I hope she does. And yes, I'm
Fingers.
being selfish when I say that. Yes. So I hope
Oh,
she does.
100%.
Yes.
I think she
So
will. I think she will.
I really hope she does, and I hope that. And it's a tough situation for the organization. I know that, but in terms of okay, but Candace makes it easy because she's still producing at a very very high level. Because organizations
Yeah.
always say when there are players that are quote unquote close to the end, do we want to pay them big money? But she's making the decision easy for you because she is balling, right? So,
Yeah.
which leads me to
Yeah.
my question. Which leads me to my question. We got to talk about it. So, for the first time in WNBA and NBA history, the Defensive Player of the Year, in this case, Candace Parker, but we have never seen a Defensive Player of the Year left off of all defensive teams. First team, second team, just completely left off. Please, Liz, tell the people what you think about this.
Well, it's bullshit. Like just straight
Facts.
up. Um, I so I there are analysts and writers and people that I follow on Twitter and read their stories that have broken this down and are much more knowledgeable than me in talking about it, and I've been reading it and ingesting it. I as a matter of fact, I'm gonna cite just so that because I think these people definitely have some good. You got at Jazz Taylor, and that's JASTAYLER, who did a whole Candace Parker disrespect train thread on Twitter. I
Yes,
highly
I read
recommend that
that.
you see that. You read that. And I also think
Yes.
hit up Jackie Powell, who's at Classic J Powell, who kind of broke down like the voting. So for her, what I understood is that so the AP Defensive Player of the Year, of course, is media voted,
Right.
and then
Right.
defensive teams are voted by coaches. So the thought there is that because the coaches could be up close. I'm sorry, I can't even say it with a straight face. Like the
Right.
coaches because they're
Right.
there in the level, and the
Right.
reporter could be there. They could, and I'm just like, I mean, I'm sitting on my sofa and I have two eyes in my head. I'm not a reporter or a coach, and I can see what I saw.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
or you know what? Or maybe the fact is, I know there was another, I forget who else I follow on Twitter, who said maybe she wasn't really that good, but I don't. That's not my feeling, and I know I'm biased because I'm a Sparks fan, and I mean, I have my Candace, Parker shirt on today. Yes,
And
but
hold
I
on.
think
Let me say this. Let me say this too. We both
yes.
ordered our unbothered shirts as well. So go ahead.
Yes, that's right. That'll be in the mail
Yes.
soon. We'll be getting that
Yes. Yes.
for sure. Uh, I honestly think that I I'm not quite sure what the coach is. I don't even know how that's. I don't even know how that's possible. If I'm Defensive Player of the Year, I should make at least second team. If you don't think I should be making the first team as the Defensive Player of the Year, I think
Facts.
analysts, that's fine. You know what? Maybe analysts, for instance, there's the Sabrina factor, right? She just came out on something of like influential player for E News Entertainment or something like that, and I'm like, say what? Like, okay, yes, she's a great player, but an influential player. So yes, the media can sometimes hype that which they talk a lot about, and I get that.
Mhm.
But in this instance, seeing what Candace was doing for her team and on that floor, I just feel like she should. I mean, she deserved the Defensive Player of the Year, and she made a full case for it, and she deserved to be on the defensive team. The lack of transparency on this,
Speak.
I
Speak.
I would love to see, like, I would love to see it, I would love to see, because I
Yeah.
don't know, like, call them out or whatever. Like, something needs to be changed. Something needs to be
Yeah.
changed. Or maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But like, this is some bullshit. It same goes with like when you see someone like LeBron getting one vote for MVP, you're like,
What's going on here, right?
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. Like, okay. But then you start to wonder what do they really mean? What do the awards really mean? Like, tell me what check marks you checked off, so at least I can be like, okay, this is the rationale, or this is what they were thinking. But I don't know. I think it was disrespectful. I think it's a huge snub. I saw it with the Olympics, as you were saying. And in that thread that Jazz had, saying, like, her and Gino and that whole thing, and then the Olympics wanted to make her say that she retired. And she's like, oh, no. You got to live with the decision that you made with.
That you made.
I'm not going to say a damn thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think when she posted that unbothered, when she posted that unbothered post, you were just like, yeah. Don't come to me to answer the questions that are for you. I don't have any questions about my play, about what I did. Exactly. And she doesn't need, I mean, she's a generational player. She's someone who, like, you knew she's going to make, these teams and these awards or whatever. So it's not like she needs it, but it's just like, really? You're going to go way out of your way? Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Don't come to her.
Yeah. To explain it, facts. Like, it's exactly like you said, because, like, even to your point, even if fine, okay, you don't think she's defensive player of the year, but the fact that when I was watching this throughout the year, because she was playing so well defensively, and so I was deep diving and looking at the advanced statistics, and she was like something like third in defensive win shares, third or fourth in defensive efficiency. So it's like, what are we talking about here? Right. And it was baffling to me. It was just completely baffling to me. And we talked about this before. We love the W, right? So I want to get your insight on this, because when we were texting about this, you said you were thinking the same thing. So we obviously love the W. And there's a segment of basketball people out there that at every turn that they absolutely have an opportunity to do so, they tried to disrespect the W and the W's fans. So having this type of press, what does that do for not you and I, because we're going to watch it and we know the real, but for this person that always finds an opportunity to say something negative about the W, and they're like, look, your defensive player of the year is not even on the first or second all defensive team. Talk to me about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. That the real inconsistency there. I think it is a major inconsistency that someone who, from an outsider would say, well, look at that, they came with shit together. And they have this unified front, and they have Neka Umake, who is like the president of the it's just like all the commissioners. And yet when it comes to like how they're viewed from media versus from internally, there's such a disconnect. What am I supposed to take away from that? So it's like, if someone decides something that they like this person today, then I guess that's the person we're all going to be talking about. It's like, what are we basing it on? Not that we have to placate trolls and haters, because, we don't. But as a league that's mature, I think that that's like a blind spot that needs to be talked about. And, like I said, I don't know about you, but we're biased because it's Candace Parker, and it was so
well, of course,
that position, because it's never happened.
Right.
on WNBA, it's so glaring. They need to check that. They need to figure out what happens there and how they can have better alignment, because that way it's like, to your point, anybody new seeing what's happening won't be like, God, they look like a bunch of rookies over here in this league, because they can't even get their shit together between like who they think a defensive player of the year is and who isn't. Which also, Jackie Powell shared a really good article about like defensive plays, which you know because you're a player and you scouted and what have you, still play. Me, for someone that's not that deep, could read it and understand, and after reading it was like, yeah, so Candace, So what you're saying is Candace. So, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, it's still, the outcome is still the same, but like from
Right.
an outsider's point of view, we looked at a little bit like rookies.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Agreed.
it was just so crazy to see it. And so to your point, even when you go back to that 16 Olympics, like when she wasn't on the team there, and I remember the statement, and then she said what she said. And if you look in the W, here it is. This is the best women's basketball league in the world. And she was in the top 5 in MVP balloting in 2016, and she's not on the Olympic team. It was just, I just, I didn't understand it. I did not
Yeah.
understand it.
In the words of Isaiah Thomas, I met the criteria.
Facts.
I don't
Absolutely.
understand
Right.
why I wasn't there.
Yes, she absolutely did.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, and it's funny because like you oftentimes when you have transcendent players, and now this happens with LeBron, the narrative always changes with him, but not of his doing, of other people's doing, right? Because at first, and I'm using this as an example, because at first, that's where it's similar to me. Because at first, when we first started the playoffs, it was, man, Portland's the best 8 seed of all time. And then when the Lakers lost game 1, not only are the Lakers going to lose, they're going to get swept, right? And then the Lakers proceed to win the next 4 games. And then it was, oh man, now you're going to play Houston. You're going to play Harden and Westbrook. Oh, it's going to be tough. And then they beat them. And then the Clippers get knocked out. And now the narrative switched from the Blazers being the best 8 seed of all time and Houston's going to get them to, man, this is a cakewalk for LeBron to the finals. It's like, wait a minute, you can't have it both ways. And it's just crazy to see those elite players that, and I want to ask you this. Do you think it's a function of wearing the purple and gold? Right? That
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. There's just certain teams that are going to be like that, and you got to roll with it as a fan. Or, I mean, and it's even doubled because there's LeBron haters, right? And then there's Laker haters, and it's just like a effect of that, which causes it. I mean, you see the analysts go crazy. I would say like the only analyst that is on the other side is Shannon Sharp, who's like really loves LeBron. Like he doesn't care what jersey he wears.
Well, we need him to start talking about Candace like that too.
Yeah.
Because like that purple and gold,
like it.
Yeah. It's so crazy that again that that what that jersey brings when you wear it for the Lakers. Because I remember being a Sparks fan when Lisa was playing, and there were, as great as Lisa was as a player, there were people that were like, I don't like Lisa Leslie, right? And I'm like, what are you basing that on?
You're right.
So like,
you're right.
It's so crazy what that purple and gold does. And that ties it back into. No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, like when the Aces came on, had their team, it was all love. People were like, yeah, we can't wait. A lot of people here from LA were like we all love Vegas, blah, blah, blah. It's so great. They want Liz Cambage going there. And I'm like, why don't you want Liz Cambage to come to the Sparks? Like, why are there already like all this like animosity built up against the Sparks? You were just like waiting for Vegas to come so that you could be like, oh great, I have a different team. It's like, what's so it's part of the flavor, really is part of the flavor, that purple and gold. It's just part of it, part of the mystique, it is what it is. That's why we have the mental game.
There it is. That's exactly what, great minds. That's exactly what I was getting ready to say. Spot on. So I won't hold you too much longer. I really appreciate you taking the time. We got to do this again.
Oh, absolutely.
We have to do this
We got to
again.
do this again. We got to bring the other hosts in. You got to come on to season 3.
Yes.
Starts next week. Yeah, for sure. I loved this. I didn't even know StreamYard. Maybe I'll have to do something like this. I don't know. Always learning new things to do. I love it.
Yeah. You know, it was funny because at first I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do this on IG, and because I've been playing around with it, but I don't like to feel rushed because you have exactly an hour. Yeah.
Right.
And so so I was like, you know what? Let's go on StreamYard. Let's get it. And then when I finally figured out what I was doing, we were good. So I appreciate you, Liz. Let's do this again.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
Absolutely.
And let's go Lakers.
Lakers in 5.
Yeah, Lakers in 5. And how many games are Aces in what?
I'm gonna say Aces in 4.
All right. You know,
well,
and
no,
so you remember when
Aces in 5. I'll say Aces in 5. I take that back. I think they're gonna go the full series.
Now you remember when our Sparks got knocked out, I texted you and I asked you, is it okay to root for the Aces now? So
I just say
yes. So
I mean, in the back of my mind, I was thinking the same.
Yeah. So I hope they win. Liz, I appreciate you. Let's do this again. Let's do this again. I appreciate you. Yes.
Be healthy and safe.
Yes. All the above. I appreciate you, sis. I'll talk to you soon.
Peace, everyone. Thanks for joining.